Would you all please take your seats? The clerk will now call the roll.
Hi.
John Donovan. Michael Hurley.
Here.
Jay Liff. Gaylord Meyer. Eric Sundman. Pete Ambrose.
Here.
Catherine Burstein. John Jones.
Here.
Jeff Steele.
Yes.
Keith Varian. Ed Bateson. Sam Cargill.
Here.
Hank Ferentz.
Here.
Dave McKenzie. Mary McCullough. Heather Dean. Joe DiMartino. Bill Gerber.
Here.
Joe Palmer.
Here.
Cindy Waldron. Josh Garskoff. Lauren O'Brien. Andrew Semmel. Ruth Spay. Carol Way. Julie Gottlieb. Alan Marks. Jay Siebert.
Here.
Go Siebert, sorry. Jay Walk.
Here.
Liz Esma.
Here.
Jennifer Hochberg.
Here.
Kevin Hopkins. Eric Newman. Phil Pierce.
Here.
Hal Schwartz. Kathy Braun. Alex Durrell.
Here.
Jason Lee. Tom McCarthy. Jeff Molarano.
Here.
Pamela Iacono.
Here.
Ellen Jacob. Lori McCardle. Carol Pontrelli. Chris Timniak.
Here.
Brian Caffarelli.
Here.
Brian Farnan.
Here.
Ray Newberger.
Here.
Bill Perugini.
Here.
Bruce Ryan.
First of all, I just want to take a moment of personal privilege and let you all know that it's Representative Hurley's birthday, which he's reminded me 75 times. Happy birthday. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item of business is to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular monthly meeting held on June 22nd, 2015, moved by Representative McCullough, seconded by Representative Caffarelli. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes. To receive a report from the Affordable Housing Committee. This item was heard in committees. There was no follow-up necessary, so we do not have that on the agenda for this evening as follow-up. Item number 4, to consider and act upon the following reappointments to the Town Facilities Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Stephen Pintaniello, unaffiliated, 147 Trillium Road, term July 2015 to 2018. Rodney J. Van Duzen, Democrat, 157 Long Dean Road, term July 2015 to 2018. Moved by Representative Hochberg, seconded by Representative Zezima. Is there any discussion on this item? Are these two gentlemen present this evening? Would you please rise? Thank you very much for being willing to serve again. Is there anybody who wishes to ask these gentlemen any questions? Seeing none, is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this item? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes unanimously. Thank you very much. To consider and act upon the following appointment to the Employee Retirement Board as recommended by the First Selectman, John B. Mahoney, unaffiliated, 520 Fulling Mill Lane North, term November 2012 to 2017, to fill a vacancy created by the resignation of Sanford Herman. Moved by, don't all jump at once, Representative McCullough, seconded by Representative Ambrose. Is there any discussion? Any comment from the public? Back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes. Item number 6, to consider and act upon the following appointment to the Ethics Commission as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. David G. Bothwell, Republican, 235 Shoreham Village Drive, term 2015-2017. Janice I. Carpenter, Republican, 144 Harbor Road, term July 2015-2017. Loretta J., Democrat, 116 Rolling Ridge Road, term July 2015, July 2017. Moved by Representative Gottlieb, seconded by Representative Smay. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? Seeing none, back to the body. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes unanimously. I wish to thank all of those people who are willing to serve the town in those capacities. The next items up on the agenda are items number 7 and 8, and I will entertain a motion to combine these two items for discussion purposes only. Moved by Representative Hurley, seconded by Representative Timniak. All those in favor of combining the two for discussion purposes only signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none. The two items together are resolved that a certain contract negotiated by and between the town of Fairfield and the Fairfield Fire Union Local 1426 concerning conditions of employment for the period ending June 30th, 2013 be and hereby is amended in the manner described in the attached tentative agreement so as to make the contract effective through June 30th, 2017 and to incorporate certain other changes regarding wages, hours, and other matters. For discussion, item number 8, to consider and act upon the following resolution recommended by the First Selectman. Resolved that a certain contract negotiated by and between the town of Fairfield and the local union number 530, Connecticut Organization for Public Safety, COPS, concerning conditions of employment for the period ending June 30th, 2013 be and hereby is amended in the manner described in the attached tentative agreement so as to make the contract effective through June 30th, 2017, and to incorporate certain other changes regarding wages, hours, and other matters. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Representative Palmer.
You seem to be working.
It's not working? Oh, then use this one.
Hi, Joe Palmer, District 4. When both the police and fire contract came across in email form via our normal monthly call information, I was pretty surprised. It came kind of out of the blue. I believe we were about 2 years past the expiration date of the contract. Both contracts, that is. And I just wanted to, through you, Madam Moderator, ask the First Selectman, I was in at committee meetings last week. I'm not sure how this was discussed, but what changed, or what was the catalyst to have both of these agreements come really at the same time after such a long period? Was there, what kind of give and take happened? If you can maybe elaborate as much as you can on that. I just want to see how we got to this point where the contracts came in after this long period of time.
Simplest way to say it is that's when they were approved. All right, until they're voted on by the unions, we have no guarantee that they'll pass. And so we have to wait till after the union vote before we bring them before this board.
So this contract, as it is, all the points that were agreed to, it's been more of a process thing at this point, or when was the last thing that was negotiated? Let's say it just seems like after 2 years, there was a point in time when this, was ironed out, or maybe there was still activity going on. But I just want to get a sense of, what changed at that point to get us to this point. Even though there's a delay in getting it approved, what got this to be agreed upon by both parties?
I'm not going to suggest there's one final point. It's a question of when you're negotiating this, it's all part of a package. It's everything kind of coming together, and they were able to come together, and this settlement was reached. But there were discussions right up until the last minute on that, and so we weren't sure that we could get the agreement, schedule a union meeting, get the educational piece of the union, because the union also had to be educated as to what was in here so they could vote from an informed standpoint on this. We wouldn't know what their vote was going to be, and we have time limits in terms of when we get back, so as soon as it was passed, I called the moderator and let her know that we had agreements that we were going to be bringing forward.
Okay, so I guess it seems like a fluid process. I think just after, it just seems like at some point something changed, and got us to this point. But you're saying that it was more fluid, and it just took 2 years. That's what happened. It took a long time to nail it out. There wasn't a major impasse or anything between you and or between the bargaining team and the unions. I want to get a sense of the back and forth on this contract. I guess that's really the key. How, is this a big compromise? Where were there give and takes that were occurring along the way, or were in a big way, or were they minor? I'm just concerned that that the contract is 2 years expired, and I just want to understand why it took so long to get to this point. That's all.
Simply put, there were a lot of items. We went and explored quite a few items, and in one sense, everything was on the table in doing this. It takes a while to get through all those, and it takes a while to put together a package that's acceptable on both sides and understood fully on both sides, especially in this day of health care and the complexity of health care agreements and medical coverage. It took a while to get through all that to make sure everybody understood where we were, where we were going, what the impact was on our firefighters and our police officers, as well as what the impact would be on the town. But there's nothing, when it's that complicated, there's nothing that's quick or easy about that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Representative McKenzie.
David McKenzie, District 3. I appreciate all the work that went into the negotiation process and how difficult it is. And I also appreciate the very fine work done by our policemen and our firefighters, many of whom are here. But I'm not going to be able to vote for this contract for a number of reasons. First is that the compensation is still about 2 times the rate of inflation. And we can't continue to do that as a town. The town budget and spending has gone up 2.5 to 3 times the rate of inflation over the last 17 years. We will not be an affordable or desirable town if we keep doing that. Secondly, it had no 401A in it. Other unions in the town have converted to a 401A. Why is it important? We need a 401A because when we get to that point and we're not dealing with a pension, we will know what our expenses will be. Right now, we have to set aside money. We don't know how fast it will grow. The actuaries say it's going to grow at 7.75%. We don't know that, and anybody who lived through the market of 2008 knows you can't count on that happening every year. So I feel we should have moved towards a 401A. There was not adequate movement in the compensation on health. The active employees' contribution is still around half what it is in the private sector, and we continue to have OPEB for people in retirement. In the private sector, when people are retired, they go on Medicare and they buy their own supplement plan. We haven't come to that. It's very important. Think of a scenario. Somebody 25 years old comes to work for the town. They work for 25 years, perform excellent service. They retire, say 70 to 80% in pension. And that could go on, based on actuarial tables, for 35 years with cost of living increase. We can't afford to keep doing that. So for those reasons, I can't vote for the contract. On the other hand, I can't vote against it because, number one, it's too expensive to go to arbitration. Number two, we already have a precedent that says for the teachers, we voted a 3% increase, even though most people here, I think, thought it was 1.7, and we voted a 3% increase for administrators. But for those reasons, I can't vote against it. So the result is I'm going to have to abstain from tonight, and I hope others will join me in that. And some people might say, well, you're throwing away your vote. You're not doing what you should do as an RTM member. I don't feel I'm abdicating my vote. In fact, what I think I'm doing is making a statement. And the statement says, we can't continue to compensate workers at this level and have the town be solvent, number one. Number two, we have got to stop this, the way these negotiations are going, which are moving at a glacial pace to make the reforms that are necessary to keep this town on an even keel. For that reason, I'm going to abstain. I hope others will join me. Thank you.
Representative Gottlieb.
Julie Gottlieb, District 6. Bear with me. Excuse me. I actually did not go to work today and came in today because I felt this was a very important meeting to be at and a very important vote. With all due respect to some of the earlier comments, and for the benefit of those who are in the room and then also watching on Fair TV who may not have access to the same material that we all do, I would like to just emphasize that I believe this is a very good contract, is a good compromise for the town. We have never negotiated a contract that has been more beneficial. We are making progress with our town contracts. It's coming, it's happening. Yes, it's slow. I will, excuse me, I'm sorry. When you compare us to other towns, which many of us are wont to do, the increases are actually lower than what other towns are agreeing to. And we went into these negotiations with very specific goals that we wish to obtain. And we're able to achieve success in each of those areas. And they are different for police and fire, so I won't go through all of them. I would just pick a couple of them so that people are aware. There were changes made in health care plan design. There were changes made in increases in employee health care copays, increases in employee OPEB contributions, increased employee contributions to the pension plan. And all of these things kept the total cost to the town at an acceptable level. And the town achieved all of these goals without giving concessions. This is a good and fair contract, and I urge this body to vote in favor of it. Both of them.
Representative Zezima.
Liz Zezima, District 6. I'd like to address the consistent comparison, the conflating between government and the private sector. So for the purpose of anybody here who doesn't know this, and for the public, the difference is government is a regulated service industry that is bound by constitutions, charters, and state laws. And the private sector is not. We also are bound to negotiate labor contracts. I think to compare what anyone in the private sector does tonight with the people in this room who put their lives on the line is an insult. I would like, Madam Moderator, through you to call Bob Mayer to please explain to this body and to our guests and to people at home the cost structure of switching to a 401A. At some point, what we're doing is we're providing a training ground. So we have people who come to work for the town of Fairfield with a 401A instead of all of our competitors. Just like in business, you have to worry what your competitors are doing. So if everyone else has a pension, they come train with us and they leave to go to another town. So we're losing good talent. If I may, through you, ask
Mr. Mayor?
a little bit of a explanation.
You have to use this mic, the other mic's broken. Yeah. What a mighty thing it is.
A couple of quick comments, and then I'd like to turn the mic over to Attorney Hipson to respond in more detail. A 401A is a pension plan, just like the defined benefit plan is a pension plan. There's costs to the plan. The costs are set. Representative McKenzie speaks frequently about we can budget, they're predictable, they're not variable. And that is a correct statement. However, a 401A can be more expensive than a defined benefit plan for multiple reasons. In fact, I think if you look historically at what's happened in Fairfield, a 401A over the last several years would have definitely been more expensive. And to carry on from here, I'll turn over to Mr. Hibson.
Attorney Hibson, if you could just introduce yourself for the record.
Attorney Emmett Hibson. I was the lead negotiator at the end of the negotiations for police and fire. And addressing the 401A question, that was an issue that we looked at. We looked at the parameters of negotiation. We looked at what would make sense moving forward if we were to go to arbitration on this issue. And one of the questions was getting cost certainty. Well, the union's position on that would be we'd give you cost certainty, but we would make a required contribution to the defined benefit plan every year. And right now, the city does not have a required contribution. There is an ARC the city must pay based off of the funding levels, but there is no mandatory requirement to the contribution. So that's a risk that we would have to look at. And the reason being, if you want cost certainty, in 2004, the town contributed to police and fire retirees $0. 2005, $0. 2006, $0. 2007, $0. 2008, $0. 2009, $0. 2010, $0. 2011, $43,617. 2012, $1,515,892. 2013, $1,664,396, and in 2014, $3,955,000. Total contribution over an 11-year period was $7,178,905. The percentage of payroll over that period was 4.99%. If you were to contribute to Social Security alone, not even a defined contribution, you'd be paying 6.2%, which would be $8,903,000. If you had a 5% defined contribution, below any I'm aware of in the state, would be $7,179,000. Your total contribution would be $16,083,000 over that same 11-year period. that is not a factor that we want to put on in arbitration. We would lose that position. So going to a 401A as it relates to police and fire was not a strength to us. So that is the factors that we look at. Those are the things that we look at when we consider what are issues to bring forward in arbitration. That was not one of our strong points.
And actually, one other comment, the 6.2% is on all wages. Our pension plan contributions that we do make are only on base wage. So if you, and given the percentage of overtime in the department, you're actually talking about a 9% total of base wage to realize the 6.2% on all wages. I'd like to make one other comment, if I may. It's regarding the 2 years to took to.
That was not addressed.
You're right. That's why I asked. But if someone does ask.
Mr. Mayor is anxious to address the 2-year issue if anyone is interested, but Representative McCullough.
Mary McCullough, District 3. For the benefit of those sitting in the audience and those at home, through you, Madam Moderator, to whomever would like to answer this question, could you explain to us why, who, and why contributions were not made in those years Attorney Hipson noted?
Mr. Mayor.
The very simple answer is because the town bodies did not vote to make contributions for those years. However, a more complex answer, every year people work for the town earn benefits. They earn their salary, they earn their health care, and they earn their pension. And there's a cost to that pension that they earn during that year. That cost is called the normal cost. Normal cost to the town for the pension is about 14%. So if the town was covering its liability, its contractual liability, it would have paid 14% of base wage during those years. And in fact, one amendment to Attorney Hipson's comments, he started in 2004. The town also made zero contributions in 2001, 2002, and 2003.
As a follow-up, town bodies, such as this one, can't vote on something that weren't recommended to be voted on. So, for the record, were pension requests recommended to this body in the years that you called on and referred to?
I was not, the recommendation would have to come from either the First Selectman, the Board of Selectmen, or the Board of Finance before they would come to this body. You're absolutely correct. This body can only decrease, cannot increase. So this body could not have made that increase if zero contribution requests came to this body. That is a correct statement.
Thank you. I just wanted on the record that previous administrations did not recommend that this body contribute funds to this area.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this item? Representative Timniak and then Representative Gerber.
Good evening. Representative Timniak, District 9. I apologize for my subdued tone tonight. I'm battling what Representative Gottlieb has and not feeling on the top of my game. But I do want to stand before you and talk about a couple things. At the subcommittee meeting, I asked a couple questions about this contract being negotiated over a 2.5-year period, and was told by Bob Mayer that it didn't cost the town any extra money to do that. I don't know, is that still accurate? It didn't cost us any extra money to negotiate this for 2+ years?
The way that question was interpreted by myself was, did the results of the contract cause us any extra money? And my answer to that was no. The results of the contract that we have over the 4-year period took into account the fact that this was a 4-year contract, and the total costs and the total benefit compensation changes were viewed in the light of a 4-year contract. So I fully believe that the end result of this contract is as good as any contract that would have been negotiated sooner. However, I would say this further, that had the town placed timeliness on doing something right now, the contract would have cost more, because we had to work to get to where we are. The fire department, the police department didn't come in and say, hey, we'll take 2% a year. No, the fire department saw the votes for the other contracts. The fire department, police department had other issues, other requests. We are where we are because we took 2 years to negotiate the contract.
Okay, so I hear what you say, and I sort of disagree with that. I think there are costs. There's a couple costs. First of all, I believe there's the cost to the taxpayers who basically floated a bill, I would say, which they didn't know, a credit card bill. The police and firefighters, they had opportunity costs. They didn't get their 2% increase, 2.5% increase for 2 years. I understand that's what we negotiated at the end. But when you look at the case of 2.5% today versus 2.5% a while back, I think opportunity cost for the town is an issue which I take offense to. I think we left some money on the table by not negotiating this in a timely manner. You put the contract in front of us. The employees know that they have a working contract for the next 4 years. Now they've basically been placed in limbo for 2 years, where the taxpayers had no idea of what we were negotiating. All they knew is we kept adding to the contingency fund. And today is essentially the day the bills due. So that's one issue I have. The second thing is, I asked for a breakdown of the legal fees, and this one baffles me a little bit, too. I got the legal fees. In 2013, we spent $110,000 negotiating the police contract with Keenan, McHale, and Escalera. $110,000 for a firm which didn't finish the negotiations, to me, seems like an awful lot of money to spend on a firm. Can I ask why they didn't finish the negotiations? And that's for the police contract. All told, the firm which didn't finish negotiations on the contract the town spent $136,000, and Attorney Hibson came in and I guess finished it off. So can I ask why we spent so much money on a legal firm, a law firm, which didn't finish negotiating the contract?
With any contract where there are a number of issues to go through, it takes a lot of research, a lot of exploration, and a lot of looking at what's happening in other towns, other contracts, other unions, what the settlements have been, what might happen here. So that's all part of what rolls into that. And a lot of discussion that takes place along with that, so that both sides can understand. In terms of the total amount of money, I also think at some point there we actually got close to arbitration, in which case we started to do some of the research that RACS set up, and as this body saw just a couple months ago, that arbitration can run up quite a bill very fast, not because of the hours you spend in a courtroom, or not because of the number of hours you spend in front of the arbitrator, or not because of the number of hours you spend face-to-face, but because of the research time and the write-up time and the preparation. So I think that was also, if I'm understanding the question correctly, that was also part of the ebb and flow, and I know in that case we got very close to arbitration on that.
So thank you, Mr. Tetra, for your response. That goes to my point, too. The further we get away from the original start date, now, for those of you at home, I would like to just let you know, you can negotiate, I think it's 180 days prior to the contract. So essentially 6 months before the contract's due. That's when you're supposed to sit down, start your negotiations, put your plan in place, go ahead. So after the contract expired, it took an additional 2 years to get to where we are today. The further you get away from the original day of the contract expiration date, I believe the arbitration panel looks at that and says, well, at this point, we're closer to the next contract being due, which we can start negotiating in a year and a half at this point. So I think the arbitration panel would always tend to lean towards ruling it on behalf of the union representing it. The other issue I have with that same point is the further you get away from the 2.5 years that you get, and you go to the arbitration panel, you're now looking to say, hey, listen, if we are going to spend money on legal fees, and we are going to go down that route, we might as well put that money in legal fees negotiating the next contract. So I sit back and I say, smart negotiation from the beginning, with a sense of urgency. Negotiate in good faith, negotiate with a real timeline in place, negotiate with a purpose to resolve the contract, not just for resolving the contract for the sake of having it done. Negotiate the contract for the purpose of giving something to the police and the firemen so they have an ability to stand up and say, I have a contract for the next 4 years. Not so they're in a limbo for having a contract for 2 years. Negotiate a contract so the taxpayers know what they're paying for. Do it so that they have the ability to say, you know what, this is what I'm getting for the next 4 years. Now we're cashing. Yeah. 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 Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Duly noted.
Okay. So, yeah, just to wrap up my point, I think 2.5 years is far too long. I think smart negotiation from the beginning. And I think we spent way too much money on legal fees from a firm which didn't finish. All told, $150,000 is just too much money to spend on a firm which didn't do the final negotiation. So that being said, a good government decision, knowing where we would stand with arbitration, knowing that it's been 2.5 years, I will be supporting this contract. I encourage RTM members to do the same. Good government decisions are hard to come by, but this is one where we need to move forward. We need to start looking towards the future on this. So I will be supporting this contract. Thank you.
Mr. Tetra, I know you had a couple of points you wanted to address, and then Representative Gerber.
Just to be absolutely clear, when I took office 4 years ago, we had 6 open contracts that were all past their due date. There's nothing easy about negotiating 6 contracts in that period of time. When we got finished with those, and we got those done by 2013, we basically finished up and we had 7 open contracts. Now, whoever decided that all these contracts should come due on the same date didn't ask anybody in finance, because we can't do the financial analysis to go through all these. Forget Irene, forget Sandy, forget Nemo, forget all those other things that happen as a normal course of life in a town, but there's not enough time and enough people. Each union is negotiating 1 contract with the town. The town is negotiating 7 contracts with the unions. And I agree, that's not fair to our firefighters, that's not fair to our police, that's not fair to the other people. We shouldn't overload our system, because the town doesn't have enough people to do the work to put all those together. Now, in terms of how the arbitration panel looks at that, I didn't realize you were an arbitrator. I'm not. I'm not quite sure how they weight that, but I didn't believe that was one of the criteria that they looked at in stepping through. They look at whether the deal's fair, they look at whether the deal is comparable to what happens for other capability, and they look at what's taken place in that and what happened with recent settlements within that time frame from comparable towns, towns with similar unions in your geographic area. So that's all part of it. So yeah, there's no question that one of the goals is to spread out the contracts so they don't all come due on the same date. so they don't all come due at the same time, because quite simply, we do not have enough people to go through all that, do the analysis, do the negotiations, and get it done on a timely basis. With a range of understanding, I think it's two levels here. One is that one of the things that came out of all of this is we did spend that time, and we did get a much better understanding of what's important to our firefighters, what's important to our police officers as we go through this, and I think that will help in future contracts. So thank you.
Representative Gerber, and then Representative Braun.
Bill Gerber, District 4. Madam Moderator, through you to Mr. Mayor. The 2 years it took to get the contract done, did you have anything more you wanted to say on that?
Some people are really good at taking hints. Actually, this relates well to the last comments about the 2 years in arbitration. The union did not want to go to arbitration. The unions preferred to negotiate in good faith, just like the town was negotiating in good faith. There were a couple of times when the town said, let's go to arbitration. And in the dialogue, it was determined, mutually determined, not to do so. Also, opportunity costs favors the town in this situation. With my apologies to the police and fire, we don't pay the wages for 2 years. It's not a lost opportunity cost to the town, it's a lost opportunity cost to the employees. So apologies there to the employees. But the bottom line is 2 years, it took 2 years for the three parties, police, fire, and town, to come to a fair, reasonable agreement, and it's an agreement that is focused on the employees, focused on what's right for the town, and if you look at all the comparables, is more than fair to the town compared to what else is going on in the marketplace.
No, I'm good, thanks. Just briefly, this contract, the annualized increase in cost is just over 2%. It's 2.09%. It is higher than inflation, but it is low. If inflation goes to 5%, I doubt we'll see 5% increases. I think these things are, they even out over time. So this seems like a very reasonable contract. What I've heard is that we got basically this contract met all of our town's objectives. There have been a couple comments about increasing, contributions at a snail's pace. I don't think a 5% increase in healthcare contributions is really de minimis. That's actually a pretty big jump. And I assume, in future, everyone's going to be paying more. In the private sector, we've been paying more and more. But if I don't think I've ever increased my contribution from salary 5% in one given year. So that actually is a pretty big step. An increase in OPEB contribution, an increase in pension contribution. This did result in a lot of gives. And I'm assuming that the 2-year delay was because both sides thought this was a bad deal initially, and so ultimately they had to come together and come together to a deal that both sides maybe wish they could have gotten a little more, and that means it's a good deal. I'm a little surprised at the prior speaker, Mr. Timiak. It sounds like he would have given early to the demands without negotiating a contract that's this good. I don't think that's what the town wants. I think the town wants a tough negotiator, and I applaud both sides for negotiating toughly and coming to some sort of resolution that basically met in the middle, I assume, and that's really it. Yeah, again, on the 401A, we have to be competitive. Someone mentioned that other towns are providing 401As. I'm not sure enough towns are providing 401As in our area to be a material sort of indicator of what, you know, what we could have seen. Had we gone to arbitration, my belief is that there's no way we would have gotten that because surrounding towns just aren't giving it. And that's it. Thanks.
Representative Braun and then Representative Ambrose.
Catherine Braun, District 8. I have a few concerns with this, and I'm going to be voting no on both contracts. And one concern is the legal fees. The legal fees without arbitration was about $210,000, my understanding is. That's a crazy amount of legal fees with no arbitration for contracts that took 2 years. It seems to me if we had been able to draw a harder line earlier in the process on some of these issues with health care or even with compensation, we might have had more of a chance. What we hear from the lawyers every time is this body, when this body gets a contract, we're a bunch of potted plants. We have no power and no authority, because if we vote against something that's already been negotiated in good faith, that will count against us. So some tweaking of this contract that I feel could have been an improvement could have helped the union members by getting them their contract amounts earlier, but it also could have helped the town's budget, because the town's budget is going to be, we're going to be in a harsh realm for the next few years. 4 years at 2.5% increase a year, or 2% cost overall increase a year. That's a lot. I think all of our union contracts, we have to follow the advice that Representative Timniak just mentioned, which is do this early on. The prior lawyer, McHale, that we had, he explained it to us very well. The time to arbitrate and to try to, you know, take a stand is early on, not when it gets here, and that's very difficult. When it gets here, that's a very bad deal when you try to arbitrate when it comes here. So I feel very strongly that the $200,000 of legal fees should have been spent on having a harder discussion early on. I don't know what happened. We don't have a seat at the table. I think the legal fees are too high. And for those reasons and my concern over what's going to happen at budget time next year, the town can't afford these long-term commitments. The amount that's discretionary shrinks every year. The percentage of our budget that's discretionary shrinks every year, and the town is simply not affordable anymore. Thank you.
Representative Ambrose.
Peter Ambrose, District 2. The first selectman talked about fairness. Truly, it's not fair that both contracts came before the RTM at the same time. It's almost serendipitous that they arrived at the door at the same time. But that being said, I understand this issue of fairness on both sides. But it's quite honestly not fair to the RTM representatives who have to review, assess, analyze, and try to compare the proposed budgets in a very short period of time. And I find it troubling that, that we really don't have sufficient time to really compare and vent on these issues. But I think the issue of fairness, I can see it working on all sides. But I think one has to consider 2 years is a long time. But then to project it upon the RTM to make a decision within a 2-week period, I think is unfair. But all that being said, I am going to vote in favor of both contracts tonight.
Representative Hurley, Representative McCarthy, Representative Donovan.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 1. I do plan on supporting both contracts tonight. I do have a question through you, Madam Moderator, either to Fiscal Officer Mayer or First Selectman Tetro. I understand the point of there sort of being a backlog of contracts and having to work through that and how that can delay things. I think one of the things that either Bob or Mike said was just didn't have the resources available in finance to run the analyses. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't recall ever any requests to, bring in any sort of, financial consultants on a part-time or sort of an hourly basis to help alleviate this backlog. We can talk about the backlog, how it's not good, but what is it that those who are negotiating the contracts and who are involved in the process, what is it that you were doing to improve it? And then secondly, procedurally, this would be to the attorney, and I could be totally wrong here, but has any discussions been made through those, I think, 6 or 7 unions, whether or not there was a way to stagger these contracts? This way, our fine men and women in the police and fire department and other unions don't have to wait 2.5 years for a contract. Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to respond to the financial analysis time. It takes time, but that's not a major delay factor. The major delay factor is the time it takes for the meetings, the conversations, the negotiations, just the interchange. That's what takes the time. And the finance department was not only involved in running numbers. The finance department was heavily involved, attended most of the meetings with respect to the discussions at the last 2 years, actually last year and a half.
And I think part of when we looked at what we needed in terms of legal support, we also looked to Attorney Hipson, who had more available time than some of our other attorneys, because one of the things that happens is when 2 attorneys are trying to match up schedules, you can literally take a month or more in between meetings, not because you need all that time, because you can't get everybody together within that framework. And I would say that we did go looking for additional help in the finance area that never made it to this body, Mr. Hurley, so I understand why you wouldn't know that. But last year, we had gone to the, and had passed the Board of Selectmen, got shot down at the Board of Finance, additional help for the finance department. That got through this year, but a year ago we tried to get that, and it did not get through. So it never got to this body. Okay. So I understand you not being aware of that, but we did take steps in that regard.
Okay. Just a small follow-up to that. I did listen to most of the BOF budget hearings the prior year, and maybe this is through Bob Mayer. Was it specifically pitched to the Board of Finance that you needed this additional financier? Because when it came to the RTM this year, I don't recall any discussion about the need to have this person to facilitate the contract negotiation. But I could be wrong. Looks like I'm wrong.
I just want to say you guys voted for $62,000 in additional funds from my department to utilize for part-time and temporary help, and it's fully appreciated.
Okay. Thank you.
Being one of the people that worked with Mr. Mayor on that, there was a line in there about union negotiations and financial analysis. This year, I don't know what happened last year. That I don't know. Representative McCarthy.
Tom McCarthy, District 8. I suppose I want to stand up here and voice a couple of points about my frustration of this process. Whether I agree with the contract or I do not, at this point in time is academic, as every member of this body knows, because voting it down, the consequences are dire from a financial standpoint. Now, quite honestly, there are elements of this contract that concern me for many of the reasons that were already articulated. One of them being the year-over-year increases higher than what I understand corporate increases to be. My other concern, or point I'd like to make is I'll have to disagree with respect with a point made by Representative Zezima that private sector and public sector are fundamentally different. Yes, they are, obviously from a regulation standpoint. But the private sector ought to be the metric by which we measure the compensation. Because in negotiation, market demands, market forces no longer apply. So we have discussed moving towards a private sector model. Every year I've been on the RTM, and every year we stand and talk about this. Yes, this is something we need to do, both in medical and post-retirement benefits, and then we've expressed our frustration that it takes too long. We've had this discussion every year. I recall it six years ago. So, again, I'm concerned on that point. I have concerns about this agreement, as I've had with the other union contracts, the teachers and the administrators, and its impact on our budget. Because the fact of the matter is, this is more the budget discussion than the budget we go through in May. So, all that said, I'm conflicted about what to do here. I don't agree with every element of the contract, but I'm concerned about saying no. Thank you.
Representative Donovan.
Thank you. John Donovan, District 1. Looking at this, and again, it's amazing to me that these two contracts come up this month when people aren't likely to be here. It's very quick. It's whatever. To me, the key issue here is affordability. Affordability is really important in the town. The reality, based on a study done by the state of Connecticut, which I've talked about up here half a dozen times, is that public sector employees in the state of Connecticut make 20% more than private sector employees. Excuse me, if you can hold on. What I'm talking about is salary increases, so back off.
I control the floor here. Stop. You may finish your point.
Thank you.
Please hold on.
Let me talk about why that point is important. Because as we talk about salary increases and we talk about the relevance of those increases, it's important to look at public sector versus private sector employees. So to restate, there's a study that was done that shows public sector employees in the state of Connecticut make 20% more than private sector. It's incredibly relevant. So as we look at that, fire and police are different. I certainly get that, okay? I looked at that fire with the lumber yard. It is a different thing. But then is the base pay too low? Because the salary increase is double the rate of inflation. So either we're talking about a base pay that's too low or something else, but that salary increase is double the rate of inflation. How long can this town afford to pay for that type of thing? I haven't heard that argument. Now, as we go in and we look at what happened with the administrators, we know if we vote this contract down, depending on how aggressive the negotiators are going to be, there's a good chance we're going to lose in arbitration. So for that reason, I'm with David, that I can't vote yes and I can't vote no. So that's the explanation for my abstention. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this issue? Representative Walker.
Jay Walk, District 6. It's unbelievable. I'm sitting here listening to everybody about what was wrong with how the contracts were negotiated. Can we move on? I mean, I don't think anybody here even looked at anybody who's in this room. We have firemen and policemen here who protect us. Some of the firemen and policemen who are in this room saved my daughter, was there in 5 minutes. This town is lucky. I'm fuming. This town is so lucky to have a policeman come to your home, a fire truck come to your home, and an ambulance. Some towns don't have that. David knows. Some towns only have what? A fire truck come to your house. And you have to wait for one. My daughter was severely choking, and the first responder that came was a police officer. I'm sorry for getting emotional, because this hits really deep into me about these people who are sitting here. The salaries that I see that these officers and firemen make, I don't think they get paid enough. Be serious. Neither do teachers. This town is okay. We keep making this town feel, some of us make our town feel like we're falling apart. We have a AAA bond rating. The first selectman, some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I know were part of that. Let's not make this a Republican or Democrat or independent night. Let's make it for these people who are here. Let's make it for all of them. Give them what the contracts are negotiated. It's over. Please, I hope you can find it in your heart to vote yes for this contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. I understand their emotions are running high this evening, but please, no comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this item? I just had some commentary that I wanted to offer before we go to public comment. And that is, as a representative from District 9, first of all, I'm voting in favor of this contract. I have not been a big fan of some of the other union contracts that have come forward. I think that they have been too rich. But those are unions that have a private sector equivalent. And there is not a private sector equivalent of a public police force or a public fire department. So for me, it is incredibly difficult to measure public and private. With other bargaining units, I have no issue. In this instance, I do. So on those arguments, I find it hard to compare and contrast the two. I need to look at the contract that was negotiated on its merits. While I disagree with the process, I disagree with the timeline, I disagree with the legal fees, I believe that this is fair because it was a give and a take. And that's why I'm voting in favor of it. I am, however, very upset with the fact that we sit at a negotiating table and we have an ordinance on the books that allows us to have non-union employees go into a pension plan. And we ask all of our bargaining units to move to a 401A. I think that's completely disingenuous. And for any of us to be arguing that they should all be in a 401A when we haven't fixed our own ordinance, and even worse, dare I say, no one from administration bothered to bring it to our attention when they knew about it. Shame on us for not reading it and knowing it ourselves, but even worse, the people sitting at the bargaining table never said, hey, you want us to do a 401A, but you've got this ordinance that says I get to put the next 5 people that I hire that are my direct reports into the pension. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right. And I think that that absolutely needs to be corrected before the end of this term. But I do rise before you as a member of District 9 and tell you that I, for those reasons, will be supporting this contract because I do not think that there is a private sector equivalent, and I do think what was negotiated was fair. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this item? Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? Please come forward to the microphone. I'll move it over. State your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Bud Morton, District 1, Sasko Hill Road. Members of the Board of Education and the RTM tell me that we must pay our teachers and school administrators well because they do an excellent job and people move to Fairfield for our schools. And without great schools, our property values would decline. Members of the Board of Selectmen tell me we must pay our department heads well because they do an excellent job and are key to making Fairfield special, and without great public services, our property values would decline. Members of the RTM tell me we must pay our police and firefighters well because they do an excellent job, stand ready to risk their lives, and without great public safety, our property values would decline. These are all valid arguments, but there is one big problem. Since labor costs are 70 to 80% of the town's spending, if we continue to approve increases in public employee compensation that are greater than the growth in the taxpayer's income, then eventually public employees will have all the taxpayers' income. But before that happens, we all know the taxpayers will leave, which is what more and more of our neighbors here in Fairfield and in Connecticut are doing, which in turn, guess what, is hurting our property values. By the way, people will leave even faster if it turns out that we can't earn 7.5% returns on our pension and OPEB funds, which would increase our unfunded liabilities and our annual pension and OPEB costs. So if we really care about what happens to our property values, we must stop approving labor contracts like these that provide increases greater than the rate of inflation, which is currently around 1.5%, and that leave us exposed to the risk that future investment returns will be below 7.5%. Thank you very much.
Steve Krawczyk, 229 Jennings Road, Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm also the owner of doingitlocal.com, and you're lucky I don't do political news, because I'll tell you, I cannot believe I am standing here again before you to talk about how great these guys are. When you see what they do on a day-to-day basis, you should be ashamed of yourselves that you hold them up and you're so anti-union to them. I can't believe that. You have a bad day at work. What could that be? You know, your boss yelled at you, you had trouble with sales closings. How about pulling a body out of a burning building? That's what I saw these guys do. And day to day, I see this on a day-to-day basis. And you argue and you pick little battles with them on what it is, and you drag it out for 2 years. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
I'm not going to make a 5-minute speech like I did last time. But I want to thank those that have spoken in... Oh, I'm sorry. Eric Caliper, I was the past vice president of the Firefighters Local. I live at 505 Woodhouse Road, so I'm also a town resident. And my kids are 5th generation in this town. And I'm very proud to be able to live in this town, which a lot of my guys can't. I've heard a lot here tonight, very passionate on both sides. And I want to thank those that have voiced their support for the police and firemen that are in this room. But I've heard a lot of misinformation too. And at the beginning of this meeting, I gave my business card to Bud, because I know that he's been sending you all emails. And him and I will have a chat, and I'll make sure the facts are straight. But cost of living is not 1.5. It's almost 2. We've made concessions on pension contributions, OPEB contributions, and had a 50% increase in our health care costs. And what's driving this town's budget is not wages, and it's not the pension contribution. During the Dorrell era, the pension contribution was 3% of the town budget. We're nowhere near that right now. The BOE budget was only 48% of the town budget when I became a firefighter here. It's now 55. People are not moving out of town. They're moving in town. When I look at the new housing development off of Mill Hill Terrace, each of those houses is going to bring 4 more kids to this town. That's where the real issue is. You want to cut the budget? You want to stop it? Put a moratorium on building. But there's a lot of people in this room, and there's a lot of people on town boards that make a good living off of real estate. And that's where the real driver is. The real driver is they want the beautiful school so that when they bring their salesperson by and they want to make the sale, they can show the beautiful school and make the sale. That's what it's about. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes to speak. Gary McNamara, Chief of the Fairfield Police Department. I am not suffering from a cold, however, I still have the effects of a car accident, so bear with me also. I just want to thank the police officers and firefighters who are in the room tonight. Obviously, they have great concerns, not only for the service that they provide to the town, but also to the government in action. And really being here to be a part of it, to see how people think, to see their views, to understand their views. Certainly no views are bad views, they're people's views. But I think it's important that we all sit here and understand how we all interact together. I also want to thank the members of the Police Commission who are here to support the police officers. And if there are fire commissioners here, I certainly want to welcome them also. First of all, and I want to thank the RTM in general, many of you over the last year have taken an opportunity to understand the challenges that we face, at least on the police side of things. Many of you have taken part in our training, some unique training we did in Milford, to get an understanding of the challenges we face. Many of you, or some of you, have participated in our Citizens Police Academy, an 11-week course to understand what it's like to be a police officer, to be one of the men or women of the Fairfield Police Department. But it only touches on really the challenges that we face in public safety. And there's a variety of them. Turn on the news. Anything that you see on the news is a challenge to public safety, even in the town of Fairfield. Now, it might not happen here. We didn't have a hurricane the past year. That doesn't mean we don't prepare for it. We have to work towards that. It's a challenge for us to do that. Last year, the Fairfield Police Department had 45,000 calls for service. That's a challenge for us, 45,000 calls for service. The most calls for service in 12 years for the town of Fairfield. There's been national and local discussions on community trust. How do we build better community trust and community relationships? There's been challenges on the growing threat of terrorism. That's not a scare tactic. It's something that the director of the FBI was in New Haven a month ago discussing. It's not a threat. It just is the reality. Cyber threats. Many of you in business understand the challenges of cyber threats. Now, you may understand also at a local level community members who have identity theft, who are challenged by those threats. That challenges us in public safety. We have to learn new things. It certainly challenges the uniqueness of that, especially when we're talking about global threats. And the growing discontent and anger within our communities, it's a challenge for us. It's a challenge for us to understand the men and women of the Fairfield Police Department and others go out every day, just like you, to your jobs, and yet they're challenged every day to really work through some of the unique interactions that our society has, and you all see them every single day. You interact on red lights. You just interact with a lot of discontentment within our communities. And it's a national issue that we're trying to address. We have training demands, given all that we're facing, and we have preparedness demands. Many of you also may have interacted with us on not so many challenges. Many of you may have been when the Fairfield Police Union served dinner to the seniors at the senior center, because we understand that community trust and community engagement is what's important. Many of you may have participated in the toy drives that the union participates in, and police in general. There's 104 members of the police union. There are 4 members of the department that are outside of the union. But we're all certainly working together in one mission, which is just to keep Fairfield safer. And we continue to meet those challenges, and here's the unique part of it. How do you have a public safety officer, male or female, that interacts with the community facing all the negative challenges, and at the same time will bring a group of Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts through for a tour of what we do every single day? So the challenges are real. And the challenges are things that we know about and face every single day. It's not to say that there's other community challenges. There's financial challenges that this community faces and others. But I just want you to understand that day to day, right now at 20 after 9, this evening, while there are members of the police department and fire department here, there's a whole group that aren't here. And what they're doing is they're out there ready to respond to the challenges that face them. Some of them known and some of them not known. So we all have challenges. We'll continue to have challenges as we move forward in the next couple of years. But I would encourage each of you to look at what we do and take into account the challenges that the community faces and at the same time the challenges that we face, and understand that this contract should be approved. And thank you for your time.
Frank Chaplinsky, 1189 Merritt Street. I'd like to thank everyone here for the comments they've made. For those of you that are supporting the men and women that are here tonight, I do happen to be a Fairfield Fire Commissioner. It is my privilege to serve as chairman this year. I am asking you to support the contract for these men and women. I do come from corporate America, corporate finance, so I understand some of the comments that were made here tonight. A couple points that I will just throw out there. From my experience in corporate America, salary re-rates, and it depends on the corporation, have been somewhere from 2 to just over 2% for the last few years. So I don't think it's unreasonable what the unions have negotiated. Secondly, I've heard concerns around the pensions, and I understand that this body is looking for a paradigm shift in the pension schemes and some of the way the unions are compensated. I can tell you from corporate America, paradigm shifts do not happen in year one. They happen over time. It's a progressive function. So please keep that in mind. Last thing I will say is regarding the 401A, I can tell you from corporate America, when the 401K program was implemented, and I believe it was implemented as a supplemental program to the pensions. It was never intended to replace the pension plans. But what you've seen is an increased volume of people rotating in and out of the corporations because there is no incentive for them to stay. And that's fine, and forgive me, Mr. Mayor, that's fine for an accountant or finance. If somebody comes in, stays for a year and leaves, who cares in finance, right? Maybe the numbers are wrong, but when these ladies and gentlemen, if somebody comes in and leaves, you lack the experience. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've been a volunteer in this town, and I had the pleasure of serving with these ladies and gentlemen. You want that experience. When you're going into a building, you want that experience with you. That's the only thing, and sometimes that will help you come back out of that building. And if anyone here believes that these ladies and gentlemen, and I can't speak for the police, so I'm going to speak for the fire. If they don't believe that they deserve this contract, which I feel is fair, tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, put on your ski pants, put on your parka, go outside and cut the lawn. That's what these gentlemen and ladies have to do when they respond to a fire in this situation, in this weather. All right, so thank you for your consideration. I ask you please support the unions.
Is there anybody else who wishes to address the body? Seeing none, back to the body. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the item? Thank you. Discussion on these two items is now closed. Item number 7, to consider and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the First Selectman. Resolved, that a certain contract negotiated by and between the Town of Fairfield and the Fairfield Fire Union Local 1426 concerning conditions of employment for the period ending June 30th, 2013, be and hereby is amended in the manner described in the attached tentative agreement so as to make the contract effective through June 30th, 2017, and to incorporate incorporate certain other changes regarding wages, hours, and others matters. Moved by Representative Hurley, seconded by Representative Timniak. We've had discussion. We've gone to the public. Will the clerk please do a roll call vote?
John Donovan.
Abstain.
Michael Hurley.
Yes.
Ken Ambrose.
Yes.
Catherine Burstein. Yes. John Jones.
Yes.
Jeff Steele.
Yes.
Sam Cargill.
Yes.
Hank Barron.
Yes.
Dave McKenzie.
Abstain.
Mary McCullough. Bill Gerber.
Yes.
Joe Palmer.
Yes.
Cindy Waldron. Yes. Josh Garskoff.
Yes.
Lauren O'Brien. Yes. Bruce May. Yes. Carol Way. Julie Gottlieb.
Yes.
Joe Siebert.
Yes.
Jay Wolf.
Yes.
Liz Esmond.
Yes.
Jen Huckberg.
Yes.
Kevin Hopkins.
Yes.
Phil Pierce.
Yes.
Kathy Braun. Alex Durrell.
Yes.
Tom McCarthy.
Abstain.
Jeff Malronio.
Yes.
Pamela Iacono.
Yes.
Ellen Jacob.
Abstain.
Lauren McCardle.
Yes.
Carol Poncherelli.
Yes.
Chris Timniak.
Yes.
Brian Caparelli.
Yes.
Brian Farnan.
Yes.
Ray Newberger.
Yes.
Bill Perugini.
Yes.
Bruce Ryan.
Abstain.
The item passes 31 in favor, 0 against, 7 abstentions. Congratulations, you have a contract. Item number 8, to consider and act upon the following resolution recommended by the First Selectman. It's probably faster just to go through the thing. Resolved that a certain contract negotiated by and between the town of Fairfield and the local union, number 530, Connecticut Organization for Public Safety, concerning conditions of employment for the period ending June 30th, 2013, be and hereby is amended in the matter described in the attached tentative agreement, so as to make the contract effective through June 30th, 2017, and to incorporate certain other changes regarding wages, hours, and other matters. Moved by Representative Hurley, seconded by Representative Caffarelli. Will the clerk please call the roll?
John Donovan. Abstain. Michael Hurley.
Yes.
Ken Ambrose.
Yes.
Catherine Burstein. Yes. John Jones.
Yes.
Jeff Steele.
Yes.
Sam Cargill.
Yes.
Hank Barron.
Yes.
Dave McKenzie.
Abstain.
Mary McCullough. Yes. Bill Gerber.
Yes.
Joe Palmer.
Yes.
Cindy Waldron. Yes. Josh Garskoff.
Yes.
Lauren O'Brien. Yes. Bruce May.
Yes.
Carol Way. Julie Gottlieb.
Yes.
Joe Siebert.
Yes.
Jay Wolf.
Yes.
Liz Esmond.
Yes.
Jen Hockberg.
Yes.
Kevin Hopkins.
Yes.
Phil Pierce.
Yes.
Kathy Braun. Alex Durrell. Tom McCarthy. Jeff Malronio. Pamela Iacono.
Yes.
Ellen Jacob. Lori McCardle.
Yes.
Carol Poncherelli.
Yes.
Chris Timniak.
Yes.
Brian Caparelli.
Yes.
Brian Farnan.
Yes.
Ray Newberger.
Yes.
Bill Perugini.
Yes.
Bruce Ryan.
All right, while I still have your attention and before I announce this, there's 2 other things on this item, so please don't bolt out of the room. The item passes 3107. Congratulations, you have a contract. Item number 9, under Rule 32 of the RTM Rules to Regulate, amendments to Chapter 99 of the Town Code, Transient Merchants, sponsored by Michael Hurley, District 1, Joe Palmer, District 4, and Pamela Iacono, District 9, have been referred by the moderator to Legislation and Administration Committee. I'm pleased to report that that has come out of committee and will be in front of the body on the September and October agendas. Item number 10, to consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting and which may be properly acted upon the rules of the representative town meeting. I have 2 items. The first being, there will be an August call for LNA. So if you're on LNA, pay attention, there will be an August call for you. And then Representative Braun has asked for a very quick moment of personal privilege. You have in front of you documentation about an invasive species that has hit Fairfield. She just wants to be proactive, give you guys the heads up, and there'll be more hopefully coming out from the town on that as they look into it more. Representative Braun, you have 1 minute.
Very briefly, you have a handout. There's a couple extras up there. This is a beetle that attacks all kinds of evergreens, mostly pines and, not firs, pines, firs, hemlocks. It's coming from the south. It came up through the New Jersey Pine Barrens, and it was just spotted in Connecticut for the first time, according to the DEP website, in March. It will attack trees, and what I'm asking everyone here to do is, if you're worried about your trees and not losing basically most of our pine forests in Connecticut, look at any pine tree you have in your yard. If you see something that has like a popcorn-like bubble on it, please call the DEP. The phone number is on here, and call a licensed arborist. The DEP can give you names of licensed arborists. This is an extremely destructive insect, and it could end up really being very costly and also create a lot of hazards, because as trees become weak, they need to be taken down or they'll fall down. And they also will spread. So right now, where they're at now is these beetles could already be in these trees, and they're going to give birth or get out of larvae stage in the next couple weeks, and hundreds of thousands or millions of these bugs could be flying around infecting other trees. The only solution is to take the tree down and chip it. Yep. Thank you. These are live trees, so you want to keep your trees healthy. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to everyone's attention. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Representative Ambrose, Representative Gottlieb, thank you. We stand adjourned.